Welcome back to the 100th episode of We Connect. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I'm talking with Anna Funda. She's an award-winning author based in Australia, and she's right here in India. She'd come here to Kerala to attend the Hay Festival, giving us her time today. We were talking just now about these Stasi people whom you met, the men who actually were there at the time. You said that they actually came forward and wanted to speak to you. That's a bit surprising that they would want to actually tell you what happened or where they were coming from.
I was a bit surprised.
I would imagine so, yes.
What I found was, after doing many interviews with these men, was that they were people used to power, and they were great believers, really, in the communist project and in the East German state. And the fact that that country had ceased to exist and that that communist project or idea was widely discredited didn't affect their faith in the state.
Really?
Or their faith in communism. So I think it was very interesting for me. And what I realized was that if you believe in something very strongly, it's probably a bit like religious faith, for a very long time, it's impossible or extremely difficult to cease to believe in that. It becomes part of what you are and of what holds you up, your beliefs. I mean, we are flesh and blood creatures, but we are also creatures of fiction and faith. And those things are almost equally as important, I think.
Did it upset you at all when you were talking to people like this? Because these are people who perpetrated, you know, a great deal of torture and crime on other people, mostly innocent people. Did it upset you at all?
Yes, I think it did. You know, I probably drank too much. I wasn't ever frightened of them. These were people who, no, they really were people who administered evil in an administrative manner. So there would have been committee meetings at which it was decided that so-and-so needed to be perhaps psychologically destroyed. So then a series of rumours would be concocted, a series of fictions to spread about a certain person, to ruin a marriage and then to destroy them and then to isolate them and then perhaps to administer psychotropic drugs to them, to, you know, so all of these sort of ways of harming people were decided from behind a desk. It wasn't like I was looking at a Latin American perhaps dictatorship where people were thrown out of helicopters and things like that. So it was really an examination of evil that was done in a bureaucratic way.
So you're saying here that really what they were doing was merely obeying orders in a way, that they were just doing what they were told to do, and they probably had no option, you know, if that's, you know, if that's the right thing, the right point where I'm coming from?
Yes. Well, just obeying orders, I suppose, was, you know, after Nuremberg and the Second World War, not really an excuse anymore.
Absolutely.
And both of my books are really looking at that area of conscience when difficult decisions have to be made. And if someone comes to you and says, you're living in a society that is closed, and it's a totalitarian society, and they say, well, I would like it if you would come and have a chat with me once a week and inform for me and tell me what your family and friends are doing, tell me if so-and-so is saying things that are against the state and so on. And if you say no, the implication would be that your child might be taken out of school, or that they wouldn't get into the university, or that you might lose your job. So these kinds of decisions took a great deal of courage to resist that, and probably more courage than I would have. So my interest was in the people who had had the courage to do that, and then I had, well, at least initially, before I met them, I had some sympathy, I think, for the people who had betrayed.
Really? Now, the very fact that your first book is your book that actually is an award-winning book, would you think, Anna, that when you look back, that it's what the world wanted to know? It's this it's very, very human, everything in this book. So do you think that that's really the reason why this book is so popular, and the fact that the book is actually an award-winning book?
I think that there are very many stories out there that can be told, and I think that if you look very closely at a particular story and particular people and you represent it really well, whether it's about love or courage or betrayal or whatever it is, and both of my books are about those things because that's what interests me, then that resonates with everybody. I mean, we all have, at some base level of our alloy, if you like, very many things in common. And I think if you, even looking at peculiar things, it might seem peculiar to look at East Germany. I know it did to my initial publishers, but the stories are very broad human stories, and they apply anywhere and at any time.
Right. How long did you take to write that first book?
Well, Stasiland I wrote over 4 years. It was interrupted by my mother's death, which put me in a state where I wasn't able to really imagine myself properly into the lives of other people. And All That I Am I worked on for 5 years. So, you know, they're big books, and they took a lot of time in the crafting.
Right. Now, let me ask you about actually promoting books, you know, from a writer's point of view. Do you believe that this is absolutely essential in this day and age to be doing this? Or can you just depend upon the internet and Anna Funder's webpage?
Anna Funder's webpage doesn't exist just yet. It's going up soon. I think it probably, I don't think it's necessary to the work. I mean, it really doesn't feed my next novel, for instance, although I'd love to say that it did. Right. Maybe you will appear in my next novel. But I'm not sure that doing this sort of thing really feeds the work. I find that it's actually quite tiring, and I think writers are generally not performing creatures, mostly. You know, there are terrific exceptions where people love the limelight, but I'm not so much one of them. But I'm very happy to do it, you know, for the reasons that I like doing festivals.
You also come across as being someone who enjoys interacting with people who have questions about you, about where you're coming from, what you're thinking, what you put into your book, your process of writing. Is that something that interests you, Anna?
I just like people. I like talking to people, you know, and I do this very isolated thing for a living, and then every few years when a book comes out, they let me out and I get to talk to people.
You get to talk to a lot of people.
I get to talk to lots of
people, yes.
And it's a real privilege.
Right. You've got 3 kids, and I think it's amazing. Where do you find the time? Okay, 5 years on that one. How do you make the time? How does it happen?
I have very low domestic standards. I think that's important.
We check with your husband about that.
I have a very, very patient and kind husband. Mm-hmm. It's been a long haul.
Right. Another short break, unfortunately, Anna, but we'll get right back with you here on We Connect. Please don't go anywhere.